The reasons that childhood abuse often produces adults who get turned on by sexual enactments of dominance and submission do not involve simple imitative learning, but instead a deep psychological need to transform helplessness into power. The puzzling relationship between childhood abuse and adult sexual pleasure is immediately solved if we understand these dynamics. And the answer to the question of how patriarchal gender roles create adults who derive intense sexual gratification from acting out these roles in bed lies in the complicated ways our minds internalize social expectations and make them our own. Sexual politics are not implanted in our brains by osmosis or by force. Instead, sex role learning is filtered through the most primitive regions of our mental life and is mediated through the most intimate exchanges with our caregivers. Sex begins in the mind and then travels downward. It is understandable why many people might be skeptical of psychological explanations of sexual arousal. Sexual arousal, after all, feels biological. It feels natural, spontaneous, almost like something that happens to us, not something that we are responsible for creating. Sexual pleasure seems to be so rooted in the body, so linked to the pleasurable stimulation of specific body parts, that any idea that our minds are running the show seems intuitively wrong. When we get aroused by a person on the street, an advertisement, a character in a film, or our partner, or when we discover that this feels good and that doesn't, or when we find ourselves thinking of a particular image during masturbation, we are not aware of feeling anything psychologically complicated. It seems like a simple case of stimulus and response. We are not aware of intermediate steps between a sexual image or behavior and the experience of excitement. There are intermediate steps, however. A complicated process intervenes between stimulus and response. The thing itself, the exciting picture, story, position, or behavior, isn't automatically arousing. It arouses us for a reason, and reasons belong to the domain of the mind. After all, one person may get turned on by a particular picture or body type, while another person finds it boring. One person's Romeo may be another person's Quasimodo. Same stimulus, different response. My patient Jan got turned off by gentleness in her partner. Her best friend required gentleness. The most erogenous zones of our bodies can be touched without a hint of excitement. Think of your last physical exam. While the slightest brush of an earlobe can be intensely pleasurable. Excitement is generated by the mind, a mind that endows images and sensations with just the right meaning to create pleasure. When it comes to sexual arousal, psychology makes use of biology, not the other way around. The key variable is always the unique psychology of the person who is responding. Only an understanding of that psychology can explain the wide variety of sexual preferences and fantasies that people enjoy, from the kinky to the so-called normal.